Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Fleet Forum Wednesday webinar. I suggest we give it one more minute before we start. In the meantime, it would be really helpful if somebody can let me know if you can hear me okay, if my sound is okay. And of course, as you know of Fleet Forum, we always appreciate it if you introduce yourself in the chat so that we know who you are, where you're from, and well, maybe also what made you decide to join us today. Like I said, I'll give it one more minute. If you are, if you want to follow this webinar in a different language, it is possible. There are some instructions on the screen. Just make sure that you activate that so that you can read whatever I'm saying on the screen in the language of your preference. So I suggest we start. We might have others coming in throughout the course of this webinar. So welcome to this 30-minute webinar where we will discuss how we can diagnose the road safety culture in your organization. For those of you who have been participating in Fleet Forum webinars before, what we will do is for about 15 to 20 minutes, I will sort of share some of the ideas that we have around that. Um, and then we will have some time at the end to address questions. Also, please feel free to use the chat to give your comments, to give your ideas. We want to make this as interactive as we can. So please don't hold yourself back, I would say. So why are we organizing this webinar, and why specifically are we addressing this topic? Well, the reason for that is because road safety remains one of the leading risks for many aid and development organizations and the communities in which they work. Fleet Forum organizes a benchmark every year, and from there, looking at last year's benchmark, using the data of 2023. 13 organizations reported 61 fatalities and 464 injuries because of road traffic crashes. And of course, that is a risk to your own staff and the passengers in your vehicles, but also to the communities that you work in. And as organizations, we have a duty of care to make sure that we reduce that as much as we can. And there's many things that we need to put in place. Mainly, we need to look at, let's say, our whole fleet management system, where we have pillars of safety. And here I simplified the model a little bit, where we have the technical safety. So what is our vehicle design? What are the safety features? What are the tracking systems that we use? But also our fleet management system, or our safety management system, where we are looking at what rules and procedures do we have, what are our SOPs, and things like that. But then also the human and organizational factor. So what is the risk perception, the motivation, the behavior? Leadership commitment is always an important topic. And those three pillars, they sort of lead to our safety performance. But below that, the foundation of how we do things is the safety culture. And the safety culture in our organization determines or drives how we look at our technical safety. It drives how we look at our safety management system. It looks at our human and organizational factors. And how we do that also drives our culture, right? So there's sort of a two-way influence on safety culture to the pillars. It goes up and it goes down. Now, the goal of this session today is to help you diagnose your organization's road safety culture and identify the next step forward. Now, of course, because we only have like half an hour in total, we will not get a full picture of your organization for safety culture. But I really hope that this session is the start of a beginning of you thinking about the culture in your organization, that can then help you also to take further steps, and because we always want to improve, right, in everything that we do. Now, if we talk about a culture, we really talk about an iceberg. A lot of the things in our culture is invisible, and it's like the Titanic, right? You only see a small portion of it, and then everything below is invisible to us. So when we look at our iceberg as the culture of our iceberg, we below the surface, what is invisible are our basic assumptions. And these are the unconscious beliefs that people have about safety. So, for example, this is what people really believe about safety. If you hear people say, like, okay, well, road traffic crashes are just part and parcel of the job or the operating environment that we are in, versus people who say all crashes are preventable, or are people who believe that crashes are preventable. That those are our basic assumptions, and they are deep, they are invisible, and it is just what you need to you need to sort of distill from what you hear people say. Then, if you go a little bit higher in our iceberg, then we have what we call the espoused beliefs and values. And this is what the organization says about safety. So this is what you sometimes see as the stated rules or the strategies, and what your leadership is saying is important, but it is not always what is done. So for those of you on this call who have safety statements, where you have the safety statement, let's say, on the wall, and leadership is saying like, okay, this is important for us, but at the same time you see unsafe situations happening, then those are the espoused beliefs and the values. So an example here is driving after sunset is not permitted. That might be in your SOP, but then in reality, you see a lot of these trips happening after sunset because other priorities are deemed to be more important. Then we see that it is an espoused belief. Then, when we go to the visible part of our iceberg, is what we call the artifacts. And all those three things, so the basic assumptions, the espoused beliefs and values, and the artifacts, those are part of your culture, right? And the artifacts is what you can see in action about safety. So these are the things that you can see, you can hear, you can feel. So, for example, do you really see passengers always at any time, whether they are in the front or the back, wear their seatbelt? Are safety posters visible in your country offices or field offices? Are vehicles maintained properly? Are there weekly safety briefings with your drivers and with your passengers? So these are all the things that you can really observe. They are the most visible, but without the deeper beliefs, remember our basic assumptions around safety, they may just be window dressing. So maybe some of you might recognize that somewhere in a country office or field office, you have a poster around safety, which has been there for the last 20 years, maybe already, and that nobody is really taking action on it. Well, then you have an artifact on the wall, your poster that says, oh, this is really important. But then if you don't have that basic assumptions right, which are really and in your organization, in the culture of your organization, then the poster is not going to help you in your safety culture. So there are many ways of looking at safety culture. methods. Many of them have been developed by the oil and gas industry or the aviation industry, because in the oil and gas industry and the aviation industry, there was already a realization at early days that well, that if you have an accident or an incident with an oil and gas uh, plant or factory, or if a plane crashes, then the impact is, of course, very, very big. Now, the good thing about these sort of ways of how you can look at safety culture methods is that you can sort of apply them, even though they are developed for a different sector, we can apply them also to the humanitarian sector or to vehicles or to fleet management. The one that I would like to discuss today is what is called the DuPont-Brantley curve. And this is a model that was evaluated, or that was developed for evaluating safety culture, and it was developed by a DuPont employee already in 1995. And what it does, it illustrates the progression of safety culture maturity within the organization, moving from a reactive approach to a more proactive approach and an interdependent one. Now let's look at them. So a reactive approach, and you can let me know in the chat, or maybe while I'll go through the different phases, you think like, this is my organization, or I recognize some of these things. So in a reactive safety culture, the organization acts after you have a crash. So the focus is only when crashes have happened. Blame is common. So when you are in a reactive safety culture, then what you hear a lot, or what you see a lot when you read crash reporting, is, oh, it was the other person's fault, whether it is our driver, whether it is the third party road user. So you see that there's a lot of focus of putting the blame on something beyond ourselves, beyond maybe even our organization. There's a big focus on finding who's to blame. In those, so each crash is well, so it happens. We do some things, we blame somebody, we maybe do some analysis for our insurance, and then that's it. The information from the crash is not used to look at, okay, how can we learn from this? How can we avoid this situations from happening in future? So in this phase, the organization does a lot to in this phase, the organization doesn't do a lot to create a safety culture. And one of the examples is that when a crash happens and sort of some limited crash analysis shows like, oh, somebody was not wearing their seatbelts, then you will find emails, you will find a poster where it says, okay, you should always wear your seatbelt. But as time goes by, the emphasis or the attention to wear seatbelts or to take safety measures is wearing off. Then we have the dependent phase. The dependent phase is where actually the organization functions as a police officer. So the organization relies on a lot of rules, on a lot of supervision, and the compliance really depends on managers enforcing policies. So what you see here, for example, is that in a dependent organization, there will be penalties if people are involved in a crash, or the other way around. There will be incentives if you are not in a crash, but the moment that you are involved in a crash, the incentive is gone. The rules in a dependent organization, or the rules in an organization with a dependent safety culture, is the rules exist, but they might not be consistently applied. So what you see in a dependent organization also is that there will be a lot of focus on the safety of the drivers, but that maybe the passengers, there's not so much focus on that. The staff will follow the rules when and the procedures when they feel that they are monitored. But the moment that maybe the moment that they drive out of the gate or the compound, they might say, "Oh well, the rules don't apply to me." So to follow our example around the seatbelt, so in a dependent organization, you will see that people will wear the seatbelts if the driver or the supervisor insists, but it will be skipped otherwise. So that is in a dependent safety culture. Maybe you already start to recognize some of your safety culture in these examples. From here, we move to the independent safety culture. So an independent safety culture is where the individuals understand and that the individuals understand and own safety behaviors. The drivers and the passengers and basically everybody in the organization share a mutual responsibility for safety, and there is less reliance on supervision. Now, I want to make it very, very clear that in the independent organization, it is important to understand that the individuals do not take this responsibility because the organization is lacking to do so. In an independent organization, in this phase, the organization does a lot to ensure that people can take this responsibility. For example, in an independent organization, any staff member at any time can stop working, can issue a stop work action if they feel unsafe without no questions asked, no blame, no repercussions. Why did you do that? No, in an independent organization, the organization creates the environment where people can take the responsibility to say, I don't feel safe, I stop this, I'm not going to do this. So I want to just make that clear that sometimes the word independent and taking own responsibility can sort of imply that, oh, well, nobody is looking out for me, so I have to do that by myself. But that is definitely not the case. Now, going to our last phase in the safety culture is when the organization is in an interdependent phase. An interdependent phase is where in the independent phase, you sort of look at your own safety and you take your own responsibility. In the interdependent phase, you look out for each other. So in a culture, in a safety culture with in the interdependent phase, you feel that making sure that your colleagues are safe, that other road users are safe, that well, everybody around you is safe, is equally important as your own safety. So what you see there is that safety is collective. So teams coach and support each other. Organizations share best practices and resources. Organizations share with others the causes of their crashes so that others can learn from that because they feel that safety is something that we all need to take care of. So again, to follow our seatbelt example, is in an interdependent culture, you will see that staff is advocating in and outside the organization for seatbelt use. So maybe the best example is if you are in a vehicle, maybe in your private vehicle, then also you feel like, okay, it's my responsibility to also make sure that people in my vehicle are safe. So I insist that they wear their seatbelts. But also if external passengers or external staff or external visitors come to the organization, that you make sure that they get a safety briefing and that you not only give the safety briefing, but also make sure that they are adhering to that and that you don't do that from a police, let's say a dependent safety culture, but that you do it as, hey, I care for you. I want to make sure that you stay safe in our vehicles. So those are the four phases: reactive, dependent, independent, and interdependent. And of course, as an organization, you can sort of move from one phase to the other. I see I see already the comment from Andy from Halo, where he sort of has diagnosed that the organization is in between two phases, right? So that's already a good observation. And of course, what you want to do is you want to move from one to the other, and hopefully that you can identify then issues that you need to solve before you can move from one to the other. Now, I see already a question like, how do you move from one to the other? Good question. And that is to going back to the culture is, remember where I said, okay, well, we have this deep invisible culture. We have the artifacts, we have the espoused beliefs. And this is really how you move from one to the other is are you able to get road safety as a real priority on the agenda of the organization? And when we say a real priority, do you get the resources, the time, the budget to make road safety action plans that go beyond, let's say, a year? Implementing a road safety culture is often taking a long time because you have to make sure that people start to change their beliefs from maybe, oh, well, road safety is part and parcel of the operating environment I'm in, up to, oh, well, I'm caring for you, right? And it requires a lot of communication. It requires people to actively demonstrate visibly that they are making the right choice in this culture. Okay, let me just quickly check. Oh, I see. Let me sort of move. I see already that we have we have some people stating like, okay, getting to the interdependence level is age of perfection, where most staff outside. Yeah, 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 exactly. And Ebuka, thanks for that. So safety by itself, road safety in particular, and that's also part of your culture, right? If in the organization road safety is seen as something that, well, it's the problem or the issue or the headache of a fleet manager, or maybe even security, or maybe in some organizations also the medical department, then I can say that you are more in well, probably between reactive and dependent. Because what you see in organizations with independent and interdependent safety cultures is that, let's say, top senior management is responsible, accountable for safety of their staff. And when we say responsible and accountable, then it is also embedded in their job description, and it is embedded in their key performance indicators. So, and remember what we said earlier about, okay, well, we can put something on the wall, or our leaders can say safety is really important, but if it is not embedded in their job description, then it is sort of an artifact, right? Okay, we say it, but it might not be exactly what we do. So that is well, how we need to look at it. Some things that I want to also with safety cultures, what I want to address, and I see that we don't have much time anymore, but what we want to address is, when you work on road safety, you are never finished. And one of the biggest risks that we have in establishing road safety, working on our road safety culture, is that we can be complacent, and that we can sort of, well, be so blind for visible risks. And what we mean with complacency is that in road safety, you should never get comfortable. You should never think like, oh, I'm done. We are in this, even if you are in an interdependent culture, you still need to be on the lookout for signs that, well, that something can happen, right? And For example, in organizations where you have not reviewed your road safety policies for the last 2 years, because you assume that your existing practices are good enough, even though your context in which you operate, your roads, your vehicles, your drivers might change. Uh, that's when you start getting complacent. Or, for example, if you do a training every year with the same content, with the same topics for your drivers, without looking at, okay, what are over the last couple of months or the last year, what were the behaviors that we've seen on the road. But if you sort of do the standard training, then it becomes a tick box thing, right? Another one on complacency is where you start to normalize the risks, where you say, oh, this is a minor crash, or near misses, yeah, that's just part of the job, right? Then you start being complacent, and that is really, really a big risk. Now, the risk that it can also take is one of the main risks that we have when addressing a road safety culture is if we have silent staff. If our staff members do not feel comfortable about, well, maybe about behavior on the road, but also with addressing risks that they see, um, then we have a risk in implementing our safety culture, because then we might focus on the wrong things. And another big risk is if we have a weak reporting culture. So if we only report when there's a fatality or an injury, but if we don't look at the near misses, or if we don't look at the smaller incidents, maybe the damage only crashes, then we also have a risk that we don't really fully understand what culture we are in. Okay, I have spoken enough. I see that, great. I see that Jeffrey is sharing how in Finnish Refugee Council, how you went to the dependent culture. Sorry, I still need to read. So that's really great examples there. I recently, that's our colleague from MSF, wrote safety training, shared a crash video that showed how a passenger in the back without a seatbelt. Yeah, and these are great examples to use, right? In your training, is really show, okay, what happens to you if you are not using safety features. But then the next step is that if we only show that in a training, but we are not actively following up on it, then the effect of the effect or the impact of showing that video is very limited, because people will forget, right? We are forgetful people. So we need to show it need to show it in the training. We need to monitor if people are doing it, and at some point we also need to make people feel comfortable that they can take their own responsibility, and then as the next step, that they also feel that it is their responsibility to make others wear their seatbelt. And with others, again, I'm not only looking at the drivers, but everybody in the organization, that they feel responsible for that. I see we have a question in the Q&A. Organizations few or no accident. Yeah, so Sam mentions in the Q&A that organizations that do have a few or maybe no crash records, that it creates a false sense of safety. And then you also, it's less likely that you can have a safety cultural change, right? So one way to support that is to reach so benchmark yourselves. If you are joining this webinar from a country office, if in your organization for the last year you don't have any or a few crash records, reach out to other organizations in your country to see, hey, how are you doing? Now, if you see that they have higher frequency, then you need to start worrying. Another one is, and here comes the Fleet Forum golden rule is, if you look at statistics from the commercial sector, 20% of your fleet will be will be involved some way or another in a crash every year. So so you can easily look at that and say, okay, well, how many crash reports do I have? Oh, it is less than the 20%. Then your focus should be on making people feel comfortable to report all the crashes. So it's that is something. And then the last one before we close, please, another question from Sam is, please enlighten the use of the word crash instead of accidents. And language helps in changing culture. So the reason why in Fleet Forum, why we use the word crash instead of accidents is the word accident has a definition. Maybe that's the right word to explain it, or has a gives an idea that that this situation of you being in the road and something happens is something that we could not avoid. Accidentally is something like, oh, well, it happened to me. It happened sort of outside of me. I could not avoid it. So that's why we are using the word crash to sort of take that, oh, I could not do anything to prevent it out of the definition. And also important, WHO in their global status report on road safety, they have also adopted the word crash as the official definition, and we like to follow our friends from WHO. Friends, I see that there are still a lot of comments. Thanks a lot for that. It is time. I see that, well, I'm sort of assuming that this topic is of your interest. We will see if we can do a follow-up webinar before the end of the year, or otherwise, of course, we will do it next year. And I will look at the comments and see if we can sort of distill some good findings from it. So thanks a lot for your participation. Our next webinar is also important to mention. Let me show you. Our next webinar is on the 10th of September, and we do that in collaboration with the Global Interagency Security Forum. And this will be a special webinar. It takes also a little bit longer. It will be an hour in the afternoon, and we will do it around armored vehicles because more and more organizations are interested in operating armored vehicles. So please make sure that you sign up for that on the Fleet Forum website. And I also, in relation to road safety, I want to draw your attention to a specialization course that we are starting in October, where we are looking in how can you make the business case for road safety. And with that, dear colleagues, friends, I would like to close off. I want to wish you a very nice continuation of your Wednesday. Hope to see you soon. Stay safe on the road and keep thinking about your road safety culture. Enjoy. Bye-bye.